On tonight's edition of The Best Times, you'll see how the boomer generation is thinking outside the box when planning their funerals. You'll discover how the arts can keep you young. We'll take a ride with a service that provides transportation for seniors, and we'll show you ways to protect your vision. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. The baby boomers have made their mark on every aspect of American life, so it isn't surprising to find that there is no exception when it comes to death. The boomer generation has always been one to buck tradition and look for alternatives, and the last act of their lives is turning out to be no different. Boomers are choosing to leave this world by employing creative alternatives to their funerals, everything from green burial to whole body donation. It's a generation that is definitely thinking outside the box. When I say the word funeral, this is probably one of the images that pops into your head. A flower-draped metal casket awaiting mourners and internment in the grave. But increasingly, this image of the traditional funeral is being replaced as boomers begin to demand an array of options from the funeral industry.
The boomer generation is not as traditional as the generation before. The generation before was pretty solid with casket, vault, embalming, visitation, the whole 9 yards. And the boomer generation is definitely open to with cremation, with whole body donation.
They're wanting options, and they're not settling for just the Amazing Grace old rugged cross in the garden.
The first area where boomers are impacting the funeral industry is cost. The National Funeral Directors Association reports the average cost of a funeral with casket and vault, but not including cemetery plot and monument, is over $8,000. Boomers are consumers, and they're ready to comparison shop before buying.
I think for a period of time, people thought that all funeral directors were the same, all costs were the same, so it didn't matter who you chose, but it does, and there is a wide variance in cost.
And the funeral services themselves are changing.
Everybody wants something unique now, and I think that is really being brought on by the baby boomer generation.
We see people especially bringing in memorabilia to services to personalize what their loved one was about in life, what they cherished, what they valued. We'll have like music for the visitation, or different ways to personalize it, for like balloon releases or dove releases, different ways just to not have just the cut and dry traditional funeral, to make it more, oh, that's so mom, or that's so dad.
Personalization doesn't stop with music and memorabilia. If you're a sportsman or an outdoorsman, you can choose this hunter's casket with elk horn handles and a camouflage interior. And for the biker or motorhead, how about this diamond plate casket? You can even choose a Harley-Davidson hearse for the trip to the gravesite. Boomers are driving other trends in the industry, none more so than cremation. This year, for the first time ever, cremations are expected to outnumber traditional burials. And by 2030, cremations are projected to rise to over 70%.
Cost is driving it. There's no question, you can't deny that. There are people out there that just simply can't afford a traditional funeral service.
Direct cremation through a crematory can cost less than $1,000, but the average is between $1,500 and $3,000. Adding full memorial service, burial of the urn, marker, and so forth will increase the cost, but cremation is the most affordable option.
It is more accepted now among all walks and religions. The Catholic Church used to be against cremation, and now it's acceptable. Even some of the Catholic churches here in the city of Memphis are putting in columbariums.
This casket represents one of the newest trends in the funeral industry, green burial.
Green burials are burials that help to make a small impact on the surrounding habitat. They produce very little in the way of emissions, and they conserve natural resources in as much as possible.
The green burial casket is made of biodegradable and renewable material, but even a simple cardboard box can be used. Embalming, if requested, uses eco-friendly natural chemicals. A true green burial uses no vault. The body is allowed to decompose and return naturally to the earth. 2 cemeteries in Memphis allow green burials, but Elmwood is the only cemetery that doesn't require a vault. The funeral industry may call green burial a new trend, but actually it dates back to the earliest days of Elmwood's history.
Because green burials have been around for thousands of years. That's what most cultures have done up until the advent of refrigeration.
Ecological concerns are the main reasons families and individuals choose green burial. But what about cost? Green burials can be less expensive, but an elaborate green funeral can cost as much or more than a traditional service. The funeral homes and cemeteries we talked with have performed only a handful of green funerals, but they agree that it's a trend that's here to stay.
I think it will grow. I don't think it will ever dominate the funeral industry.
I think that it will take probably a quarter of the business in my estimation, whereas most of your business will end in cremation, but I think a good half of that eventually will still be a traditional funeral service before the cremation.
For boomers who are truly thinking outside the box, there is an alternative to metal caskets, green burials, and cremation: whole body donation. This is the Medical Education and Research Institute, or MERI, located in Midtown Memphis. Along with the Body Donor Program at the UT Health Sciences Center, the Genesis program at MERI accepts whole body donations for use in training surgeons and developing new surgical instruments and techniques.
So when they come to our facility to get hands-on training, it's like they're in an operating room. The donors are not embalmed, so they get a realistic feel just like they were going to go in to do a procedure.
There's nothing that can replace actually physically performing something and doing something yourself. You can see it on a computer, you can read about it, but there's nothing like actually doing it. And I don't know about you, but as a patient, I would prefer that my healthcare provider has really performed a surgical technique or perfected their skills another way besides on me. And I think that's what we provide here. We provide that continuing education piece and the opportunity for that person to physically touch and do.
MERI will receive about 700 donors this year and provide training for over 13,000 surgeons. But advancing the science of medicine is just one reason for boomers to choose whole body donation.
Not only can they give back and feel like they're doing something for their fellow man, but it's also a way not to impose expenses upon your children and family that are unnecessary.
MERI covers all costs for body donors, including transportation and death certificates. When the donor's stay at MERI is complete, the body is cremated at no charge and either returned to the family or interred in a local mausoleum.
I had the opportunity to have my dad here as a donor in the past year, and then my mother passed away as well in the last year, and she wanted the traditional burial. And I will tell you, it was much easier on the family to donate to MERI because they take such good care of you. And there's just so many details that you don't have to deal with. And honestly, you know, I can feel good about my father being here, and I work here and I know, you know, the benefits of that, so I felt good about the things that he was able to do.
One of the last decisions any of us will make in this world is the disposition of our earthly remains. And some boomers may not be content with the earthly options. Elysium Space is one of 2 companies that will rocket your remains into orbit. Your loved ones can even follow your trip into the cosmos with a smartphone app. Can exposure to the arts improve the quality of life for older adults? Can listening to a 1-hour music concert result in fewer doctor visits and less medication? Well, a study by George Washington University came to the conclusion that art has the power to change lives at every age. And that is the concept behind creative aging. On a Friday afternoon, the residents of The Point at Kirby Gate are dancing and clapping to the old-time jug band music of the Side Street Steppers. This event is one of about 750 performances at over 50 facilities that will be presented this year by Creative Aging, an 11-year-old nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing the arts to our senior communities. Meryl Klein is the executive director of Creative Aging.
The arts are terrifically important to older adults. They have the power to heal them physically, to some extent cognitively and emotionally.
I think that we definitely bring music to the audience that they remember. Even when we play, you know, the memory units and stuff, you can see people kind of come to life when we play certain songs that were widely known in that. So it's nice to, you know, bring them the memories of yesteryear back.
At the Gardens of Germantown, Cherry Brooks and Cal Jackson are playing tunes from the Great American Songbook to an audience made up of memory care residents and their family members.
We continue to make brain cells throughout our lives, even though it used to be thought otherwise. But we continue to, but as we get older, the triggers for creating those cells have to be more and more novel, because so much of what we've experienced has become so routine.
The music and art presented by the Creative Aging artists provides that novel activity to trigger responses in the brain. But it's not all about science. Socialization is a key element of any creative aging performance.
Socialization is being recognized as more and more important in maintaining emotional and cognitive health. And our arts programming enables these seniors to socialize, whether it's through the workshops we do where they're interacting and helping each other, or it's simply the social and novel engagement of a musical performance.
You can see the socialization at work at this glass-blowing workshop at Plow Towers. Teresa White gives instruction to a group of about a dozen residents in the craft of making decorative glass refrigerator magnets. She teaches them how to score the glass, break it, and cold set the pieces. At the end of the hour-long workshop, Teresa will collect the pieces, fire them in her kiln, and return the finished artwork to the workshop participants. Meryl points out that socialization activities like this workshop have tangible benefits for the participants.
They are less likely to be depressed, self-reported depression. They have 1 fewer doctor's visit a year. They're on average taking 1 fewer pharmaceutical. The soul of Memphis is music. And these people who have grown up here or have lived here for decades, they feel that and they respond to it.
The musicians can see and feel that response too. Cherry Brooks tells the story of a recent performance at a memory care unit.
So when we started, Cal usually plays an instrumental. Well, he was playing one, and he just hit about 3 notes of "You Are My Sunshine," and the entire room started singing. Now, these are people who don't know their children, and they heard 3 notes, and "You Are My Sunshine" was just blasted over. Everybody in the place had chills, because that's what music is all about.
Aging commissions across the country get calls every day from seniors asking questions about everything from Meals on Wheels to Medicare. But the #1 question they ask concerns their transportation needs. How can you get to your doctor's appointment halfway across town when you can't drive or don't have access to a car? That's the plight of almost 8.5 million older Americans. But there is a new nonprofit organization called ITN Memphis that helps area seniors who just need a lift. On a Thursday morning, Tommy Cervetti, a volunteer driver for ITN Memphis, is giving a ride to Priscilla Duncan. She's on her way from her East Memphis apartment to a luncheon about 12 miles away in Cordova. This is her 3rd trip with ITN Memphis, the local arm of the Independent Transportation Network, founded in 1995 by Catherine Freund.
Since most older people are dependent on the private automobile for access to the necessities of life, and since on average people outlive their decision to driving by a remarkable 10 years, and more than half of people over 65 in this country live in communities that have absolutely no public transportation whatsoever. There's a huge unmet need for transportation so that people can remain in their homes and live a life that is worth living.
ITN Memphis is one of 22 affiliates throughout the country. They've been in operation since December of 2014 and so far have given rides to about 450 people. The drivers are volunteers that have been trained and cleared by ITN. Riders must be over 60 or over 18 and visually impaired to use the service.
They pay a membership fee of $45, and then they fund their own personal transportation account. And once they have all that done, then we're able to start giving them rides. We charge $1.50 a mile, and there's a $3 pickup charge. And that's generally about half the cost of a cab ride.
With the spread of internet-based operations like Uber, there are the inevitable comparisons.
Some people call it Uber for grannies, but I would say it's like Uber in the sense that it's a private automobile that comes to your door and takes you where you need to go. But it's unlike Uber in many other ways. For example, with ITN, you can actually pay for your rides by trading the vehicle you no longer drive.
And volunteer drivers can even bank volunteer credits with ITN to be used for rides at a later date. Priscilla Duncan has arrived at her luncheon date. At an appointed time, Tommy Cervetti will return to take her home. For Priscilla, ITN service helps her maintain her independence.
Well, right now it is of physical value to me and emotional value and personal value in that someone can come and help me with my transportation to and from the events that I want to go to.
You know, you think of transportation as just being a ride, but the truth is that in our lives, for all of us, mobility means way more than just getting a ride from one place to another. And the feelings of belonging and safety and being a part of something, being connected to the community is a large part of what transportation is in people's lives. You know, it connects us. It is much more than just a ride.
For more information about becoming a member or a volunteer driver for ITN Memphis, call or go to their website. A few years ago, I began to notice a blurring in my left eye. It was like looking through a fog. Over the course of the next 3 months, the fog got thicker, and I went in for an eye exam, which revealed what I already suspected, a cataract. By age 65, 1 in 3 Americans has some form of vision-impairing eye disease. Cataracts are the leading cause of low vision, affecting about 40% of people over age 70. And age-related macular degeneration is the leading cause of blindness for Americans over 50, which makes it a good idea to keep an eye on your future. How do our eyes change as we age?
First and foremost, that affects 100% is difficulty reading. Need for bifocals, need for multifocals, need for a second pair of glasses. That's just a normal aging change, but it's something that will hit every single person, which means that over 90% of patients over age 50 have some need for spectacle correction or contact lenses or something.
How do cataracts develop, and are they treatable?
As the cataract starts to develop, it starts to turn yellow, which is interesting because if you look at a newborn baby, their lens inside their eye is so crystal clear and it's almost impossible to see. About age 50 and 60, it's almost as yellow as a Post-it note. And if untreated at age 80, it's about as brown as wood. Cataracts are treatable. Treatable better today than any other time before. In fact, it's one of the easiest conditions to treat in aging. Surgical correction with an implantable intraocular lens is restoring patients' vision on a daily basis.
What are the symptoms of macular degeneration?
It affects vision seriously. The best way I could describe it is if you're sitting down, you're looking straight ahead, take your fist, put it right in front of one eye, close the other eye, and that's what you see with macular degeneration. Wherever you look, that's where you can't see.
Can macular degeneration be cured?
The best news is in the past several years, 5 years for example, there have been some treatments via injection which have almost eliminated the wet form of this disease. We see it less frequently in the last several years than we have seriously over the last decade or two, which is fantastic. Meaning that the majority of patients today are dealing with the dry form of the disease, which is much less disruptive of vision. It'll still have an effect, but not drastically like it does in the wet form.
What is glaucoma?
Glaucoma is also one of the leading causes of blindness in the United States, and it is the #1 cause of blindness in our African American population in the United States. Glaucoma is historically known as a disease of high eye pressure in the eye. It's a disease where the optic nerve that allows us to see is affected adversely by this higher eye pressure, and over the course of time, slowly that nerve becomes eaten away and our vision becomes eaten away. Glaucoma is a troublesome disease. It's troublesome because it's highly treatable, very, very successful in a large percentage of patients. The problem is until very late in the disease course, it's asymptomatic.
How can we protect our vision?
Routinely, go to the doctor, get your eyes checked as an example. Just make sure you leave with some good news. You don't have X, Y, and Z. If on the flip side you get some bad news, at least feel rest assured that the quicker we can treat, in almost all cases, the better you will be.
What does the future hold?
Technology is our friend, even for patients who have suffered some vision loss. There are tremendous amounts of technology to help patients deal with the vision they have remaining. In terms of medications, powerful change. From topical medications to injectable medications to surgeries with robotic surgeries, laser surgeries. The future is incredibly exciting. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to find a cure for everything, but it means that the treatments will be much more tolerable, safer, easier to withstand, faster acting, and that's with all the diseases we've talked about so far.
If you'd like more information about your vision, go to the website of the National Eye Institute. Want more information about life after 50? Go to our website, wkno.org/besttimes, and send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of the Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for the Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.